Dear listeners, welcome to Sacred Harmony, the space where consciousness meets creation. I'm your host Archita Garg, and tonight we journey inward with Dylan Borland, founder of the Caden Academy, a school of conscious creation and inner transformation. Dylan's work bridges timeless wisdom and practical mastery, helping people awaken from unconscious living and remember their innate power to shape reality through imagination. This is going to be more than a conversation, it's a call to rediscover who you truly are. So, welcome, Dylan. Welcome to Sacred Harmony. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to your listeners for tuning in.
Definitely. Dylan, what does it mean to remember who you are in a world that constantly tells you who to be? Did you get the question?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, in the work that I do in our school, we teach people to remember who they are. What I mean by that is, so many, regardless of your spiritual background or your religious background, it would appear that a lot of teachings point to the same thing at the end of the day. And that is the fact that we are not separate from God, that the power of God, the power of creation is within us. And by remembering who we are, it puts the control back in our hands of our everyday life, right? And so we no longer live a life as like life is happening to us. We're a victim of our circumstances. We're a victim of our environment. And by remembering who we are and that the power of God and that the power of creation lays within us, not some distant land, not some deity in the sky, but it's literally within us, then it puts the power back within us to shape our reality and shape our lives the way that we want to. And it takes that fear away, and it takes that being a victim away from life. Does that make sense?
Definitely, it makes a lot of sense. And I think I heard somewhere the saying that life is not happening to us, it is happening with us. So that what you said, it reminded me of that. And Dylan, was there a personal turning point when that remembrance became real for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, I'll give you a little bit of a background. I grew up in a Catholic family, actually. So I grew up in Catholicism, and it never really made sense to me. The teaching never really made sense to me. There was always kind of a disconnect. And so at 16 years old, I had left the Catholic faith, and I went in kind of in search, like so many other people do, on a spiritual journey. And I studied everything I could. I actually started with Zen Buddhism, and then I went and studied a lot of the world's religions. And I did that for, probably close to 30 years of my life. And then for a little while, I fell into Christianity, and I'm grateful for that experience because I realized a contrast there. What I found during my spiritual journey was that this concept that we're talking about, right? That the power of God in creation is within you. And for me, Christianity was kind of the catalyst for that, because Christianity taught, that when you pray in the Christian belief, you're praying to God, that you're below God. And still that didn't make sense to me. And so I started to question that, and I started to experiment with that. And I went back to a lot of the spiritual principles and roots that I had formed over those 2 or so decades. And the moment that I did that, my life started to transform, because I was in a really, there's been a few stages in my life where I was kind of at, a low, like a lot of us get to, right? My business had come crashing down. My life had become crashing down. My marriage had come crashing down. And so I started to put some of these practices in what we teach in Imagination Creates Reality to work, and my life started to transform. So when I no longer started praying to somebody in the sky and hoping and wanting something to happen, and I realized what Scripture is even telling us, that the power of God and the power of creation is within us, and I started to act from that point and use the power of my imagination and no longer want something to happen, but like Neville Goddard used to teach, you live in the end as if it has already happened. And even in Christianity, they teach you when you pray as if it has already happened, not wanting to happen, not visualizing it happening, but living in the state in which it had already happened. And when I started to do that and experiment with that, I could create over and over and over again the results that I wanted in the circumstances that I wanted. And I started to ask myself, maybe a lot of what the religious leaders are teaching, a lot of what the spiritual leaders are teaching is just that the power of creation is within us. And it's not something it's something tangible for once in my life, right? It's something that I could control. It's something that I could do through a process and repeat over and over again and see that this power of creation was real.
That's beautiful, Dylan. It's very inspiring. I don't know if you know this, but in Hinduism also there is a saying where, the God that we worship, Lord Krishna, he says that Aham Brahmasmi, which basically means that I am the universe, that the universe resides within me. And I think, yes, that is relatable to whatever you said, that the ultimate reality lies within us. So I just felt like sharing it. So, Dylan, yeah, you teach that imagination shapes reality. So how do you define imagination? Not as fantasy, but as a creative force?
So I forget now, I was on a podcast earlier and somebody called it the divine mechanism. But if you look at how reality seems to work, it's interesting. You can experiment with it because, you've got your conscious mind and you've got your subconscious mind, right? And so your subconscious mind really appears to be the biological mechanism in which creation occurs. And so, like we teach in our book, Imagination Creates Reality, it's using the power of, so I'm sure you've heard of like manifestation and visualizations and things like that. And even when you're praying, people are visualizing, but visualization is not enough. And so you have to, what I try to call kind of the cornerstone of it all is you have to combine imagination in your mind to be able to visualize what it is you want. I'm sure there was a day in your life where you had visualized doing podcasts, right? And so here we are doing podcast. But when you attach the feeling, and that's kind of the missing component, when you use your mind to visualize and you can attach the feeling to that. And so you use all of your senses in that visual, right? And so you're hearing what's going on. So for example, if you wanted to go out and get a new job tomorrow, or you were trying to bring into creation a job, you would maybe visualize that, but a lot of people visualize it as like they want it to happen, like a movie reel, right? And what I have found is that when you visualize a short scenario in your head, it implies that is already done, and you attach the feeling and you have the faith and you ignore your senses, all the things that are happening around you, and you continue to hold that short scene in your mind. Eventually, it will absolutely come to be. And we teach people to experiment with this on themselves. And so, for example, if you wanted to go and get a new job opportunity tomorrow, you might take a short scene in your mind, a 1 or 2 minute scene in your mind that implies you already have that job. So it could be a phone call from a friend, for example, congratulating you on your new job or your new raise or your new opportunity. And you begin to feel in your mind, you hear the words, you see the friend, what smell, what taste, what sounds, what is it raining outside? Is it a clear day? And you start to embody this as if it has already happened. And at some point when you continue to do that, you open your eyes and it feels to you like a powerful dream, like it, wait a minute, did that actually just happen, right? Because you're so immersed in that scene. And so that's, and that's something that people can experiment with on their own and see results for themselves. But that missing component, that kind of cornerstone of it all, is not enough to just visualize it. You have to have that feeling as if it's already happened. And then you have to exercise faith. And so you have to exercise the faith despite what's going on around you, despite the fact that it looks like nothing might be improving in your life, despite the fact that it doesn't look like this is working or whatever it might be. You have to hold that faith and trust that it will come to be.
Yes, I think that it makes so much sense. I think that's part of the reason why people create these vision boards during New Year Eve,
Sure.
right? Because visualizing things makes it seem like it's something that's possible. So, yes, I totally agree with that. But
I'll
Dylan,
expand on that before the next question.
sure, sure,
You
sure.
know, think of existence in general. Did not everything that we see in our world today come from imagination? Everything. The microphone that you're talking into was a vision in somebody's mind. The computer that we're on right now was a vision in somebody's mind. The world, the economy, everything that we experience came from our imagination. And I always reference scripture because I study scripture a lot, but I do think, not from a Christian standpoint or Catholic standpoint, but I believe that so many religious texts, even the Hindu and Buddhism and Christianity, are all pointing to the fact that, God is creation. God is a creative being. And God is creating. And that power of creation is within us. And if you look at our world around us, it's all creation. You and I, it's like we're big kids having fun. We're playing, right? Like we're playing and it's fun and it's all creation. And when you begin to approach life as an experiment, you begin to approach life as fun and creation and as a big play and a big drama, and you realize and you stop taking everything so seriously, you get back to remembering who you are, that you are God expressing him, her, it's whatever you want to call it, the universe. There's many names for God, right? Expressing himself, herself through everything in creation. And all you have to do is look around you and see that everything stems from imagination. But we have forgotten that we have the power to use our imagination. Like, it's not like circumstantial. Like, I think some people just wait on luck, or they wait on things, or they might say, I'm not lucky, or that person's more lucky than I am. Like, you are in complete control of what you experience, and what you believe to be true in your inner world will express itself in your outer world, good or bad.
Definitely. Dylan, that is such a powerful way to look at life. On that note, can you share an example where imagination tangibly shifted your life, or someone that that you have coached in a way that you could, share with the listeners?
Yeah, I run into examples of it every day. The other day I was imagining I was coming home. This is a very kind of small example, but I was imagining I'm a hunter. I like to hunt. I like to fish. And I was imagining myself on my drive home for about an hour getting a turkey, because it's turkey season right now. And as soon as I pull into my driveway, there's 7 turkeys in my driveway. Now, that's too good to be coincidental. The perfect shot, the perfect opportunity. I came home, there's turkeys, I got a turkey. But I saw that in my mind happening, and it happened. Now, that's just a very recent example. That's how every day I'm envisioning things. But there was a more dramatic example. I was always obsessed with the power of the mind to heal. And I had seen so many examples of people healing through thought alone. And there were some times in my life where I had some things that I needed to heal from. I had a collapsed L4 and L5 disc in my back. So the bones were basically bone on bone in my spine. But I remembered the work of people like Joe Dispenza, Jose Silva, and other people that had the healing code and all these types of things, people that had healed themselves through thought alone. And at that point, I had a very deep understanding of the power of the mind and the power of imagination still. And so I used my mind every day. I mean, I was so bad that if I sneezed, I would collapse. I had to sleep in a beanbag chair because my discs were bone and bone. It was really bad. But every day and every night, I would visualize in my mind that disc growing and that disc in my back healing and feeling as if I were already healed. And it took me about a year, but a year later, I regrew my spinal discs from 3 millimeters to 10 to 13 millimeters, and I was completely healed. And so that's a very extreme example of the power of imagination and what the mind can create. And that's why I say it's important to remember who you are, because the power, scripture will say, nothing is impossible for God. But you have to remember that the power of God is within you and believe that. And all things are possible, from healing your back to changing your finances to changing your life circumstances. Maybe you want to go on a vacation and you visualize yourself traveling the world or going to a different country, and you feel that and you feel yourself being there. And eventually it will come to pass. It will come to be, because your outer world always reflects what your inner world believes.
So true, so true. And that's such a revelation, like seeing imagination as a divine intelligence at work within us. So, whatever you said, it also reminded me of the placebo effect. I
Sure.
hope, yeah, I think that you have heard about it. So, yes, I think it's magical how the universe works in mysterious ways, and similarly, how our brains also work in mysterious ways. So, Dylan, moving forward, so many life reactively believing life happens to them. So, how can one begin moving from unconscious reaction to conscious creation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a lot of the work that I do. Is I think people have forgotten who they are. So we try to say, remember who you are. Remember that you are not powerless, right? And so a lot of people go through life playing the victim. I am the circumstances of life. I have no control, because they've forgotten who they are. They've forgotten the power that they have. And so the first step is becoming aware. It starts with awareness. It starts with the awareness of the fact that you are not separate from God. Whatever you believe, right? That somehow, some way, the power of creation is within you. So it starts with that awareness. If you're not aware of something, you can't even begin to change it, because you don't know that there's something that needs to be changed, or a different way to think, or a different way to act. So it starts with awareness. And then it starts with remembering that you are not separate, that the power of creation is within you. And when you have those understandings, and you can look to many different religious texts for examples of this, and other people as well, but it starts with remembering that that power is within you. And then you realize, well, what is the power of creation in these biological bodies? And that's your subconscious mind. That's the mechanism, that's the tool that is used. All of what we experience in terms of reality in our life is all here, right? It's all in that subconscious mind. And so first, become aware, because to be somebody new, you have to die to your old self, right? And so if you don't like the way your life is right now, the good news is at any point in time, you can design a new life for yourself. You can die to your old self. And, the Christians might say, be born again. You can become a new person, right? And so I like to look at life in terms of chapters. So I'm 39 years old at the time of this recording, and I'm on chapter 39. Now, if I don't like how chapter 39 played out, well, there's chapter 40, or there's chapter 39 and a half, or 39 and a quarter. I can change it at any point in time. And so when you realize that you have that ability, and you move from being a victim of life, life happens to you, and you get into conscious creation. Your life is no longer happening to you, but you are designing the life that you want to happen.
Yeah, that is.
But you can't begin to do that until you understand that you have that power.
Definitely, definitely. That is such an optimistic way of looking at life. But do you think that this shift requires discipline, or is it more about surrendering yourself?
Well, it requires maybe some shifts. It requires an openness more than anything. And so a lot of us go through life, and we've kind of got these foundational beliefs, and we stick to them. But then life continues to be the same. We expect life to be different, but we're not willing to be open and try something new. And so it doesn't require much effort other than an openness and a willing to experiment and try something new if you want to have a new life and you want to have new experiences. And in fact, it's one of those interesting things where the harder you try, the less you get. So it's like if you were to fall into a river and try to swim your way out, you're going to be swimming until you're exhausted. But if you follow what creation has created, all of creation, with the exception of human beings, we're the only ones that try to force and pull and bend life to the way we want it. And by doing that, it's just life becomes stressful, right? Life becomes uncertain. You feel like you want to have control, but creation is not that way. Creation is about surrender. Surrendering and getting in flow. If I were in that river, instead of trying to paddle my way out, I would just relax and let the river take me downstream. And isn't that all of creation? Do the birds wake up in the morning and say, I need to stress more to get a worm? Right? I need to worry about where I'm going to sleep tonight. I need to worry about my bills. No. All of creation is an act of faith and an act of surrendering to this higher intelligence. And so it's one of those things where you don't need to bend it. You don't need to force it. The Chinese call it Wu Wei. And that's an example in Zen Buddhism of effortless, like creation, right? You're not bending, you're not forcing, you're surrendering to the natural way of things. And so it's as simple as just keeping that vision in your mind and feeling it and having faith, but not forcing it. Because the more you force something, the more you squeeze the life out of it and the more harder it becomes to get. So it's about surrender, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. I love that balance. Discipline keeps us focused, but surrender keeps us aligned with the flow. So thank you so much for sharing that, Dylan. If imagination truly creates reality, what responsibility do you think that we hold for the world we collectively imagine?
What? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear the last part of it.
Yeah. So if imagination truly creates reality, then what responsibility do you think we hold for the world we collectively imagine?
Well, I think that's a very deep question, right? It can be answered in many ways. If you think about it, how many people are on planet Earth? Billions? Let's just say 8 billion people. Well, there's 8 billion different realities, right? Occurring at any point in time. And so when you talk about responsibility, I don't look at it in terms of that. I look at it as, I think human beings have free will. And we have the ability to either be good or we have the ability to be bad. And I think generally speaking, most people want to experience this life being a good person. I don't think a lot of people have a desire to be a bad person. And so with that said, it's not about like responsibility, because your reality, your perception, your experience in life is stemming from your subconscious mind, in my subconscious mind. And so that's the beauty of life. If you treat life as a play, as an act, as a dream, then responsibility doesn't necessarily matter, right? Because you're free to have the experiences that you want to have experience. And you're either going to use your imagination and the power of your imagination to do good things, or you're going to use your imagination and the power of creation to do bad things. But I think human beings in generally trend to want to be using the power of their imagination to do good things, right? If that makes sense to you. It's kind of difficult to explain. And so when you talk about having the responsibility, if you just boil it all down to its essence, life is meant to just experience. People look for what's the meaning of life. The meaning of life is just to be here and live life, right?
No, you explained it wonderfully, Dylan, and thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful philosophies about life with our listeners. I'm sure that it is going to be very helpful for our listeners. And is there any way that our listeners, if they want to, then if they a way that they can connect with you and learn more things about you? Would you share with them?
Oh, I appreciate you asking. Yeah. So the best thing to do is to visit cadenacademy.com, CADEN, Caden Academy. I'm sure there'll be a link in your show notes somewhere. And from there, I encourage people to do one of two things. Join our newsletter, because you're going to get insights every 5 to 7 days. There's almost 300 days of content and growing in that newsletter. You can also either purchase a copy or get a free copy of this book. So if people wanted to say, hey, Dylan, what you said sounds good, but I don't know. That's why I called it a self-experiment in conscious creation, because you can test it for yourself. It's a very short read. You don't have to buy it. You can get a free digital download, or you can buy the physical copy. But I would encourage people to experiment with this concept on their own, that imagination creates reality, and begin to see the transformations that occur in your life. And then from that website, you can join our Inner Edge community, which is free right now on Facebook. And you can share those experiences. You can say, hey, Dylan, I heard this podcast. I don't know. This is kind of all new to me. It's a little weird, but let me try with it. And I experimented with it, and this happened. Come to that Inner Edge community and share your experiences. Ask questions. Get engaged. Engage with me. And so you can do all of that through the website directly, those three things.
Great, Dylan. Thank you so much for being on my show. So, dear listeners, what an enlightening conversation with Dylan Borland, reminding us that creation begins within and imagination is the bridge between spirit and form. So, if today's talk sparks something in you, take a quiet moment tonight to envision not your fears but your highest self. Because when you remember who you are, the universe remembers it too.
Absolutely.
So